Joined once again on Next by Andrew Romanoff, one of, I believe, 10 Democrats still running for the U.S. Senate. So you do understand that this is the program where people come to announce that they're dropping out of the race. You're not doing that.
No. I'm hoping to be the last guy standing.
There were three well-known candidates that got out of the race after former Governor John Hickenlooper got in. He's the prohibitive favorite. What makes you think that this is a race worth staying in for you?
Well, he doesn't prohibit me from running, and he doesn't prohibit Coloradans from voting. Look, we're still 9 months away from ballots being cast. The people of Colorado deserve the right to weigh in on this race. I believe I've got the strongest record of legislative leadership, the best chance to win, the clearest contrast to Cory Gardner. I support aggressive action to combat the climate crisis, to secure health care for all, to build an economy that works for everyone. I respect Governor Hickenlooper. I'll support any of the Democrats for this nomination if they win the primary, but at the same time, I recognize that if the election were held today, any Democrat would win. Cory Gardner is trailing a generic Democrat, as you know, Kyle, by about 10 points. What we need in the U.S. Senate is more than a generic Democrat.
So, I mean, but eventually that generic Democrat is going to have a name, and you have to think that some people in the race are going to fare better than others. But you said you would support Governor Hickenlooper if he is the nominee.
Of course.
No deal-breaking positions of his, things that you might criticize him for that are so out of bounds for you that you couldn't support him.
No, but look, we disagree strongly on a set of issues, as you know, because you've had us both on. I support a plan called Medicare for All. The governor does not. I support the Green New Deal. The governor does not. I support a whole set of progressive priorities, which the governor, unfortunately, has made akin to Karl Marx or Joseph Stalin. I'm a Romanoff, no relation to the royal family, but that's a pretty painful reference. And look, if you say, as John did, that you don't want the job and you wouldn't be good at it, then Coloradans should take you at your word.
You ever change your mind about a job?
Of course.
I mean, is he not entitled to do the same?
Of course.
So, okay, so you don't hold it against him that he said that he didn't want the job and wouldn't be good at it?
I happen to believe him.
Understood. Would you stay in this primary just to make a point?
No. No, I'm running to win. Look, I believe that Coloradans are struggling and suffering. I've met too many families who have lost their loved ones on account of problems that we can fix. I bring to this race both a set of legislative skills as one of the best legislative leaders in America. Politics doesn't reward modesty, so I want to work that into our conversation, but also a sense of urgency. I think the time has run out for incremental reform. Maybe if we were starting this debate, for example, on the climate crisis 20 years ago, we could afford the baby steps that some candidates are proposing. But it's too late for that. I don't want to leave our children a world where storms like Hurricane Dorian become the norm, and floods and wildfires, heat waves like this one, and droughts become even more frequent and more destructive, and that's where we're headed.
So, do you feel like former Governor Hickenlooper is out of step with where Colorado Democrats are now?
Yes, I do. And look, we've had the last 7 months to meet folks all across the state, not just Democrats, but unaffiliated voters, Republicans. We're trying to build a broad coalition, libertarians, vegetarians. I mean, we're trying to get a big tent here. And what I sense on the part of the people I hope to represent in the U.S. Senate is a deep frustration with the way Washington works, or doesn't. And I tell folks all the time, if you like the way the Senate works, please pick a different candidate. I'm not running to do the bidding of Chuck Schumer or anybody in these national party outfits. I'm running to get something done. And right now in the U.S. Senate, nothing is getting done. And it's not an accident, as you know, Kyle. I mean, Mitch McConnell has announced that he will kill any significant piece of legislation that emerges from the House. When you call him the Grim Reaper, he takes it as a compliment.
This race is a long way from coming to its conclusion. I mean, we're still, about 4 months away from people being able to circulate petitions and so forth to get on the ballot. How do you raise enough money and keep enough momentum to be able to compete?
Yeah, that's a fair question, and it's a real challenge. We have raised more than $1 million to date from about 9,000 people, 90% of them in Colorado, folks who have logged on to andrewromanoff.com to contribute, especially now between today and the end of the fundraising quarter. We've signed on 2,000 volunteers. We've gotten endorsements from 300 elected officials, county commissioners, mayors, legislators, city council and school board members, grassroots activists across the state who are keen on flipping this seat, not just from red to blue, but from paralysis to progress, because that is what our campaign and this election are about. So we're going to keep at it. We've got house parties just about every night. Folks can find all of our events at andrewromanoff.com/events.
If you could pick one issue where you think that there is clear difference between you and Hickenlooper, and have that conversation with Democratic primary voters, win, lose, or draw for you, if you could pick that one issue where you think there's super clear contrast, what would it be?
The climate crisis, which is a crisis. Look, this evidence is overwhelming, and you know this. The scientists are telling us that we don't have much time left to decarbonize our economy, to end our reliance on fossil fuel, and accelerate our transition to a clean energy economy. That means stopping the subsidies. We provide $650 billion a year in subsidies for oil and gas and coal. That's almost as much as we spend on national defense and 10 times as much as we spend in the federal education budget. It's a colossal mistake, and it is killing us. It's turning millions of people around the earth into climate refugees, forcing them to flee their homes. Hundreds of millions more will face that fate. I don't want to continue the status quo because it is lethal.
And if Hickenlooper were sitting here, he would say that he is not in favor of the status quo, that Colorado's methane regulations, which he led on, became a national model, and that's certainly not status quo.
Well, we've seen a deterioration in air quality, as you know, here in the metro area. There's far more that we can do as a country. I recognize the governor has taken a different view on these issues. I've taken the no fossil fuel money pledge. I support the Green New Deal because I consider it the last best chance to rescue our planet. Cory Gardner has dismissed that plan as a lot of red tape. He's very clever with a little quip. But if you're serious about addressing this crisis, you need to stand up and speak out, even if it's not popular with your own party. And to be clear, it's not. The leaders of the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, who have made a different choice in this race, as you know, are not keen on candidacies like mine because we represent a threat to the status quo and to the special interests that are bankrolling that committee, like the fossil fuel companies.
You're not the only challenger to Hickenlooper who remains in this race. For folks who want to send a message that they want Colorado to move in a progressive direction, why you versus some of these other folks who have very interesting resumes and life experiences, folks who, unlike you, have not been professional politicians in the past? Why not go with somebody else to send a more clear message?
Well, that's a decision the voters get to make. I would tell you a couple things. First, we're challenging Cory Gardner in this race, and not just running to defeat him, but also to represent our state in the manner that it deserves. I'm not content as a Coloradan, forget about my place as a candidate, to be represented in the U.S. Senate and pay the salary of someone like Cory Gardner, who hasn't held a town hall meeting, a publicly advertised open event in almost 2 years. What I believe I bring to this race is a strong record of leadership, having led the Democrats in Colorado to our first majority in 30 years, our first back-to-back majorities since the 1960s. And more than that, I'm somebody who actually got things done. Somebody once told me, Kyle, there are two kinds of politicians in the world: those who want to be somebody and those who want to do something. I'm not running for the U.S. Senate for the glory or the groupies. I'm still waiting. I'm running because the time has run out on all of these critical challenges, and I believe I've got the best ability to solve them.
Do you think Hickenlooper is going to debate you? I mean, like a real debate, not some forum where you're all supposed to be nice to each other.
I hope so. I'll invite him and anybody else running for the Democratic nomination to do that. I'll invite you to moderate us.
I hope that folks will accept a debate on 9 News' air. Last question. Last time you were here, I asked you what you learned from 2 previous unsuccessful runs for Congress, and you mentioned that getting more votes this time would be good instead of less. But you also said that you learned that there are things more important than winning, so I have to return to that. Is your continued presence in this primary, despite the long odds, about something other than winning?
No, look, I care deeply about families I've met across the state who have been devastated by mental illness and drug addiction, by suicide as my family was hit. And what I hope to bring to Washington is an understanding of the stakes. Because it seems to me if you get to the U.S. Senate, in some ways you're insulated from these problems. You get health benefits as a senator that are more generous than most Americans enjoy. You get a pension plan. You get a paycheck, even if the government gets shut down. So I think it's easy to forget the people you're supposed to represent. That's a mistake I will not make. I owe my career and this campaign to the people of Colorado. I don't take money from these special interest groups, and the truth is they have enough politicians on their payroll already.
Andrew Romanoff, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Kyle.
Subscribe to the Next YouTube channel for the best of Next and some other stuff.